Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Zyori Plus One. This is episode 7. Today we've got Jack Chen. You might know him as KBBQ. You've probably seen him on past internationals, both the English panel, the Chinese panel. He's been a team manager now for a number of years, worn a number of hats in the Dota space, and I'm excited to pick his brain a little bit today. I imagine a lot of NA Dota talk today, Jack, but happy to go down any rabbit hole that comes out before us. I know we had a little pre-show, but how are you, man? How you doing in these lockdown times?
Yep, not bad, not bad. Again, I think like most people, it's we kind of hoped or thought that we be on the other side or see the light at the end of the tunnel at this point, but unfortunately, that is not really materialized. So that really sucks going into the winter, and I hope we get some real good breakthroughs soon. I mean, there's pretty good news, I guess, the other day, but who knows how long it is before we're back to normal.
Yeah, things are slowly coming together, and I guess back to normal in a couple of ways, right? Certainly in the Dota world, but also in the political world. Things have been interesting for the last week or so. I've been enjoying some of your political tweets. I'm not going to lie. I loved the, hey guys, if Pete Buttigieg ran as a Republican against Biden Harris, what would we have voted in? And then lyrical response, could we just not right now? And that follow-up actually slayed me. Like, oh, hey, Gabe, I was actually really curious about your thoughts on this.
I was hoping to hear from, and this was like 4 a.m. too. So I was like, oh, of course, Gabe is just, he sees us at 4 a.m. and he's got to, that was great. That was great.
He's fiending. Yeah. But, yeah, hopefully all that will be decided, but before too long on the proper timeline, and things will get back into normal there. But I guess as maybe a precursor, I want to talk a lot about NA Dota stuff as a team manager. I'm sure you have a great perspective on all this stuff. Are there issues in North American Dota that are outside of Valve's control? I mean, do you feel like the political climate and the current state of affairs in America with even just the protests and all the other issues we've been having, does that hurt Dota, or do you see them as almost like separate categories where there's other esports operating, for an example, while all that stuff's going on?
The obvious answer is that in theory, it should help because if people have to be at home and they can't go out and play sports and stuff like that, or they can't be outside, then there are other pastimes. I guess the unfortunate part of that is some of those other esports already had a structure or ecosystem in place where things took place online, so the transition was either seamless or even maybe helpful in some respects. Obviously, that wasn't the case for us. Mm-hmm. So I would say that was probably a real bad time for that to happen because we were one season away from like starting to move into more of that. So we didn't quite get there before everything just fell apart.
And refresh me, did you guys have any DPC points in the last season? Like J-Storm is the team that I always bring up, but were you guys also in that confusion?
Yeah, we did. I think if you went by if the TIN 10 invites were done by the top 12 at the time of that, I forget if you factored in an automatic like whatever points from the LA major, I think we were number 12.
Okay.
So we were just on the cusp. I don't know if that'd still be the case after like the Biver change or whatever, but yeah, like at the moment we would have.
Oh yeah, you're right. On the list with the last rankings, it was Chaos Esports Club 12. So yeah. There you go. And I guess I'm sure you couldn't say anything even if you did know, but I'm kind of obligated to ask here. Do we have any idea what's happening with those DPC points? Is there any indication that those are going to be relevant in some way, or is it too long now?
No, there's been. I mean, I haven't heard anything, but I mean, the further away we get, the more I seriously doubt that. That stuff. Like maybe at most it'll be like. So actually, yeah, even this won't happen anymore. I was gonna say maybe at most you can count them up to like 1 calendar year before the TI, but at this rate, it's not like it doesn't look like we're gonna have one in the early part of 2021. So it doesn't look like. I just don't see it. The further away we get, the less likely that is to be kept irrelevant.
Well, and roster stability is the big question, right? Because the ex-business associates now, they just played as for fun. They're, at least it was my understanding that for a while they were kind of sticking together as that group because they were afraid of losing these DPC points in case they did become relevant again. And without any updates, you can only play for so long without some kind of light at the end of the tunnel. What about a payout per point type thing? That's something Trent and I have talked about on the other podcast a couple of times. Like just instead of throwing them all away, just say, all right, it's going to be $1,000 per point or whatever, and then you split that amongst the team or whatever, and you get at least something for it since that season's gone. Any thoughts about that?
You mean if they just split the TI prize pool like that?
Well, I guess I don't know what the prize pool would be. I was picturing something maybe a little bit smaller, some sort of dollar or point per payout distribution. TNC has 5K points at number 1, so calibrate it however, $1 million, $10 million. I don't know that it replaces TI. It's more just if we're acknowledging we have to wipe the slate clean in terms of DPC. It's a nice way to not just sort of say, hey, thanks for playing in that season that got fucked up by circumstances out of our control. You had a good run, and that's unlucky. For players like Fear, that might be his last run. It's pretty shitty to just say, unlucky, bud. I mean, that really sucks. So that's sort of what I'm getting at. Is there any kind of partial solution than just wiping the slate clean and saying /shrug?
That's interesting, actually. That's the first time I didn't know you guys talked about that. That's a pretty, that's an intriguing idea. I think a lot of players would be, if you told them we're going to instead distribute the prize pool, the TI prize pool by DPC points and then do another one, I think a lot of players and fans would probably be against that, to be honest.
Yeah. Okay.
I think, well, for one, the players who feel underrepresented or whatever by this, obviously they have an issue with it. But I think like if you're a TNC or something or somebody like you might be pretty happy with that. But I think for the most part, people would be unhappy with that solution. If you did that to like a more limited degree, but you kept the TI prize pool or whatever, I mean, that would be nice. I'm sure people would be happy with that. But
yeah,
like anything helps during this time. It's just.
So I guess can you speak to what the players would prefer? Like what are the players saying amongst themselves would be the ideal scenario with these DPC points? Just resume? I mean, I feel like it's a shackle for some of these teams looking at this and saying, "Hey, we need to keep playing with this roster or take some sort of a penalty or, what do you do if Business Associates doesn't exist anymore?"
I mean, at this point, I don't think without even the possibility of a TI on the horizon, like early 2021, I don't think players have
no expectation.
like for some time really talked about either like what to do with the points. No expectation that it gets preserved, just because like you said, like things are so different. Even if you keep the same team together, like so much can change in even like a few months, let alone a whole year. There's no way that people would argue they get to keep those slots or those points. So I think the points is something that people have kind of let go of. It's just like,
okay,
like whatever.
All right. Now that's fair. I guess as commentators, Tret and I cling to it as like, but the standings, Jack, what are we going to do with the standings? We can't just throw it away. We worked hard for these. Majors were fought over these. But I see where you're coming from. And I think that's
I will use the standings for one thing and one thing only, and that is to defend our region's honor against those who would sully it. That's about it.
Okay. There you go. Fair enough. So manager of Quincy Crew, how is it, man? How's NA Dota these days? What's the vibe around the team? How's morale?
Right now it's not great because we just lost.
Okay. Fair enough. Yeah, Summit just happened. You guys, it was a tight 2-3 finals. Took second place. So, okay, sour timing, but
yeah. But generally, it's been. It's been tough. We've had some pretty tough stretches. If you're winning, it's like it's a band-aid at best. I think the prize pools are going up now because I think Valve is also supporting this. So that's kudos to, thank you to Valve and everybody. That helps. And that definitely like helps a bit in like, making it feel more than like a side gig, as some players have said or some players have alluded to. Basically, if you didn't win one of these tournaments before, you were going to get compensated out of it. That it was probably like a barely or not really even like a livable wage in the United States. So
yeah,
it'd be like it'd be like a very time consuming side gig. And then just long-term uncertainty is never good because you really have to take the long view on things. You have to talk about, well, guys, what if we're playing, what if we're playing a TI that's $80 million, next summer? What if we're 9 months removed from some huge mega tournament,
Mhm.
and every moment now that we spend either sulking or unhappy or whatever is a moment that we could be getting ready for that. And that's how that's how I think we should think. That's how I think a lot of teams that where people intend to stay in Dota should think about it. This is like an opportunity to make up some ground and catch up and stay sharp and close the gap on a lot of these very good teams out there,
Mhm.
for when things do start back up.
I mean, it's hard when there's no international Dota for the most part. We get cross region NA versus SA, which helps a little bit, but you can definitely feel the lack of competition. And I think that's part of why Europe feels so much further ahead right now, because when we go into regional Dota, there's more competition there. So there's more practice, there's more regular events, and that whole thing kind of feeds itself. And I mean, what's it like trying to find scrims in NA right now? Is it possible? Is there any kind of scrim culture happening?
Well, I just want to say regarding Europe, the other thing there is they obviously get to play with CIS teams too, so you can add whatever
Mm-hmm.
CIS teams to the pool of potential practice partners. Previously in the past, they would get to play us as well, because we most of our teams tried to be on the East Coast or have scrim access to them. We can't do that now because Lelos is Brazil and SVG's out on the West Coast, and you got two guys playing on like 180 200 ping. It's just too much.
Right.
But so that definitely helps them. For us, yeah, it is pretty rough because some of these NA teams don't really scrim as much, or they might just use, like, I mean, we sort of do this too, but they kind of just use the tournament itself as practice, like the group stage.
Mm-hmm.
You're just trying to, like, you're not, yeah, it runs a month anyway, and you're playing pretty much every day. So instead of like some intensive boot camp before or whatever, you kind of just might scrim a little bit going into it, and then you just use the games as practice.
I see.
So again, the pool of NA teams that are at like a professional level again is not very large. SA teams, we have scrimmed on or off like in the past, but I think there's just been more occurrences of like something will derail the scrim. We've had people just clearly just make something up and just leave after like one game. We've had people rage quit in the middle of games. It's hard. The quality control on the SA scrims is a lot harder,
I
generally
see.
speaking. So
Okay.
it can be hit or miss.
Yeah, that's a bummer. I really do miss even just watching the cross regional Dota. I'm really curious how much longer we can maintain this kind of viewership and momentum during this period where I guess there's not really anything else to watch, so it's all we've got. But at the same time, I really miss watching Chinese teams fight against European teams, fight against NA teams in the same events online with no ping. That's like where the stories are born. That's where all the magic happens. And it's kind of like you said earlier that the injection from Valve is a great help in the short term, and it's a bit of a band-aid, but it just doesn't replace what's missing. That's tough.
Yep, for sure.
So you guys have cycled through a couple different iterations, though, right? You've been Forward Gaming, you've been Chaos Esports Club, and now you're Quincy Crew, correct? I might have gotten the order wrong there.
That's right. I guess we were briefly Quincy Crew before Chaos. That's just kind of
Okay.
like our go-to name, I guess, when we're not like sponsored or whatever. But it's
You guys just
yeah.
took some old English through the QC together and like, hey, that almost looks like a logo. We're good, right? That's
We actually shout out to I was gonna share his info. I think it's, I just read it out again. But shout out to the guy who he offered to design us some logos and stuff, and that's the one we currently have is what he came up with, and it's good. It's clean. It's simple.
cool.
It's got a bit of a sort of urban, like old school Nas album like vibe to it. I guess.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what he was going for. So it's
No, the Q and the C vibe. It's definitely got like a really cool minimalist vibe to it. I like that. Sometimes these teams come out of the gate with something that's trying a little too hard, and I think there's a lot of merit to going simple. You guys are black and white. I like that.
Yeah. Quincy Crew itself has is based on our origins, I say, in Brooklyn. So they're in Bed-Stuy, Jay-Z's old neighborhood. So there's little I guess 90s hip hop to it. With the
Yeah.
album design. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, when I think of Quinn, I definitely think of '90s hip hop in Brooklyn. I mean, those two things are
Well,
basically synonymous.
it's not a the name doesn't have to do with Quinn. It's not
Really? What
yeah,
is the
it's
story?
so I actually enjoy that I keep telling the story because it's like it's a good example of the spread of misinformation and easy not just but so we when we were back at VGJ Storm, our team house was in Quincy Street in Brooklyn. Um
Ah,
it was in Bed-Stuy. It was the neighborhood. I mean, the neighborhood was being gentrified, but it was still, it's people were not used to living in that sort of neighborhood. Let's just put it that way.
okay.
And so that's yeah, Quincy Street, and like that's you can ask. There's so many people actually in the NA scene have kind of been through that experience. People forget, but you had BSJ on that team at some point for like a month. There's Monkeys. There
Hmm.
was like the old VGJ Storm guys. There's the new guy. There's like a lot of people have been kind of through that season or with us that year, and so that was kind of a unique experience because it was like the house was like it was like a barracks. Like we had like bunks, like double bunks, in a couple of the rooms. There were some things that didn't work out too great, I guess. It was an interesting year, and so people bonded around that. It was like
Hmm.
we're just we're just out here struggling and trying to make it up there. So
That's cool though. I actually had no. I really thought it was a reference to Quinn because his initials are also QC, right? His name is Quinn Callahan, so I thought it was some sort of a play on the initials, but something a little bit more original than just it being his initials. But that's good. I'm glad to hear there's more to it. So anyway, forward. I know Chaos Esports Club. That was I assume more of a formal team arrangement, like with player salaries. Are there salaries right now on Quincy Crew? I guess simply put, as a player-run organization, I generally assume no, and most of the money comes from prize pool winnings. Obviously, if you get a sponsor, then that's income, but I don't know any sponsors looking to spend money in North American Dota right now. So is that kind of the case? Is that the state of affairs?
yeah, we're on our own. I wouldn't call us even an organization. It's just a team. It's like the absolute
Just the
lowest level of atomic structure. It's a team here.
gotcha.
Um, yeah. So I mean, for like sponsors and stuff, there's been some like smaller possibilities, but then most of them, if they're gonna like budget for something, it's gonna be pretty organized and be usually like a whole year commitment, that sort of thing. And so,
Hmm.
with the level of uncertainty and stuff that exists, that's just not really realistic at this time. Um, we've considered, or the possibility has been there for like, maybe like a gambling sponsor or something, but nothing has materialized that we actually like or would want to.
So
Yeah.
what was Forward Gaming then? Because I kind of thought that was a player-run organization, but then it's kind of seemed like you guys are trying to make almost like a team secret. It starts as a player-run org, and then you build it into a brand. Am I misinterpreting that? Who actually owned Forward, and why did that brand shift into something else?
It was not a player run organization. It
I
was
see. Okay.
yeah, it was investors who had been eyeing the space for some time, and some of them had backgrounds in some CIS orgs, some experience there. So that's where that came from.
Oh.
It was not player run.
Oh, okay. So it was just after what was it, a year or almost a year? Just we're moving on, other investments or whatever, or whatever happened. So, all
Yeah,
right, I see.
yeah. I mean, yeah, pretty much.
That's cool. So, stark difference. I often postulate the advantages and disadvantages of each. Is it all bad being on your own as Quincy Crew? I'm sure it sucks not getting a salary, but is it nice owning your own shit? Like, I'm very curious about the mentality of the players. Do they sort of value that freedom, or is that counterbalanced by the risk of not having income unless you win?
I think it's always kind of complicated. Obviously, it's nice to have a team house. Obviously, it's nice to have a salary. Obviously, though, sometimes if you have like either obligations or in the case of some organizations, if you have um, I don't want to call it meddling, but like you have outside forces that come in and like have some impact on the team, or on me, or something like that. It's not always great. I think on forward that was actually like people felt that that was a significant issue.
Mm.
Less much not really the case on chaos, but yeah, it's nice. It's obviously nice to have those things. Obviously nice to be supported, to have like those resources behind you, to have all that stuff kind of like helping you, and just making sure that I guess I don't know, whatever you want to call it, like reducing your risk, or making it more stable. At the same time, though, there are other forces too that people it's harder to talk about. So, it is possible with salaries or whatever for people to become maybe more comfortable than they should, or people to be, let's say, less incentivized to worry about like winning everything and doing their absolute best and whatever than they should,
Mm-hmm.
because they can say, well, if I go to this tournament and it's like the prize pool's not that big and I don't do that great, like it's not going to be the end of the world because I got a big salary still. I mean, most
Mm.
players, to get to this level where you're not going to think that way, most players, but it's something it's like hard to,
I see.
you can't necessarily dismiss it completely.
Yeah. There's a
So
balance
there's
there, though, right? Because
Yeah.
having a safety net reduces stress, and that in turn allows you to focus more on perfecting the craft, where there is some stress to that kind of contractor life. I mean, in this case, when's the next tournament for North America? I guess there's one coming up, the 4D one. After that, I don't know. So, how long are you sitting there waiting to be able to play to maybe get paid 2 months in the future? That's a little scary.
Yeah, I mean, by no means will I argue that this is better. It's clearly not. But every situation obviously has its pros and cons. So you just try to look,
Mm,
in as much detail. Yeah, for sure. There is something scheduled after the 4D one. So that's good. But it's
good.
yeah, it's not ideal. Obviously, people would rather be a Lance.
Yeah, for sure. Any thoughts of one thing that I've heard people say kind of in the wake of the Dota Me Too movement, specifically with some of the talent in North America? There's some rebuilding to do there around NA Dota and like the pub community and just the general maybe community at large. One of the things that I saw various community members criticize is that it seems like North American players don't do enough to promote themselves or don't really do any content. Like all they do is play Dota and that's it. A lot of them don't even really stream. I guess, do you have a response to that kind of general allegation? Do you think there's merit to that? Do you think that's just true across Dota and not maybe not as disproportionate for NA as people like to say?
I think it's generally true across Dota. I think there's absolutely some merit to it where you have people who, again, pay either more attention to or invest more time and resources in promoting themselves. I think even on our team, this is Lelis is like a pretty good example of this. He's built himself a pretty good fan base and following, and I would say that I don't know how to say this in a way that isn't insulting. Obviously, I'm not trying to like denigrate him, but like he's a player. I don't think he's played at a TI before. I don't think he's been in like a super high profile team. For and like for him to still have put in the resources and the time to like build like his brand, his image, his fan base, his following, his reputation, like all that stuff. I think like that's a credit. That's a great credit to him for like clearly paying attention to that stuff. I think that kind of shows like what can happen if somebody really invests themselves in doing that. I
Hmm.
think he's an example of the good that can come from that. I think that it's definitely true that you know a lot of players, whoever can put more time and effort into that. Usually, it's a mix of like obviously it does take time and energy. Is that the best use of it for them? And in some cases, you've heard with like the streaming argument, it conflicts with they're trying to improve and grow as players,
True.
because they have to be playing to learn or get better, or like some of the things that they learn or think about need to be trade secrets, if you will, not going to be things that you're going to openly stream.
Fair.
The other thing I will say is that it's also true that obviously some people are naturally a lot more either charismatic or appealing or identifiable than others. And there is more content than people think that's out there. Like, for instance, SVG did a Position 6 pod a few days ago. And, how many people are aware of that or seen that? We did a number of kind of interviews and skits and pieces on VGJ Storm and on Forward Gaming. And, like, how many people are sort of aware of that or know about that. We did a couple of I called them vlogs, vlogs with chaos. Like how many people are aware of that? Like there is some content out there.
Holy shit, dude. Just for context, the SVG interview is posted on YouTube, on the Join Dota YouTube with 180K subscribers, November 6th. So that was 4 days ago. It has 94 views right now. 94.
There you go.
That's
There
insane.
You go.
So I mean to interrupt, but that's like, wow, you're absolutely right. And maybe that one didn't make it on Reddit. Maybe SoundCloud has a lot of listens or something. I don't know the full story there, but that puts it in context. You're kind of saying it's not a function of the content never existed. It's that people have tried it and realized nobody clicks on this. We can't justify putting our time into it for 9 views.
I mean, sometimes there's a potentially chicken or egg type of effect to it, right? Like exactly what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm like, my point there is just that there has been content. It's not that people haven't done any or categorically refuse to do it. It's just, it needs to be pretty consistent. Is the person themselves like engaging, marketable, whatever you want to call it, charismatic? Do they have something to say that's different or new, or that people like really pay attention to or listen to? I think I mean there's a lot of kind of factors that go into it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not it's not that clear just one way or the other. People have made content.
Yeah. Well, and I guess you can argue a similar thing. Like if a player shouldn't be streaming because they should be practicing and like taking their career seriously, how do you justify them wasting time on Twitter trying to be edgy or like post some memes to get some retweets? Maybe that energy is better served sort of half managed by someone else and they're just spending time perfecting their craft. Because if you're, qualifying for majors or winning TIs or whatever, that's going to do so much more for your social media reach than the slow grind, so to speak. I mean, I could see merit in that.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, I think for most players who don't already have like either a big natural following or inclination, that's the pathway that makes them, right. It's like they can either spend all this time trying to make content or whatever that they may or may not be good at, or the results speak, and that's what drives the interest and people want to talk to them and follow their lives and figure out what they're doing and stuff. The success and the drive. It might be being on a super high profile team. It might be obviously like doing very well at TI. Like those are the things that raise people's profiles the quickest, beyond just sort of trying to make content.
Yeah. And one of the things I was going to bring up and kind of caught myself because I don't know that it's a fair standard is people say PPD. Why don't more people just market themselves the way PPD does? And one, I think he's exceptionally good at it. It's not as easy as it looks, so to speak. And two, he's already won a TI. So that's elevated his status to a certain degree that's made it a little bit easier to pivot into content now because he has big reach, serious credentials, massive following. And if you don't have that big credential, it's not as easy to just turn on the Twitch stream and all of a sudden get all those viewers. I always tell people, look at Excalibur. He's just now getting these 4-figure streams, 1,500 viewers, something like that. My man's been grinding for the better part of 4 years now, 5 years at the streamer thing with small hundreds of viewers for a pretty long time. And it takes a lot of effort to the point that, I mean, that's his full-time job more so than being a full-time competitor. He's still competing, but it's a trade-off because the stream is where the money comes from.
Yeah, if you remember for when Excalibur first got put on the map, I think it was 4 or 5 years ago. I forget what it was, but it was some was it standing in for some competitive? It was like
Summit 2. He stood in on Fnatic when that was the old No Tail, Trixie, Hani, I think, lineup. And I forget why somebody couldn't be there, but he played Tinker and Meepo. And I don't think they did well in the tournament, but they won at least one really iconic game where he completely popped off and snowballed. So that was the beginning. Yeah,
and that's what brought him into the consciousness of a lot of people in the scene, right? It was being on in that situation. And then you think about how that's happened over the last few years, where his career has progressed in terms of we played with him as a stand-in at Hamburg, I think 2 years ago. He's been he's jumped around a bunch of different teams since then. And then, that's a trajectory that you can think about. This guy, how did he come into the consciousness? How much has that consciousness kind of grown and his community's viewership? It's taken a lot of sustained effort and stuff for sure, but it's there's no guarantee that him putting himself out there like that every day or all that time is ultimately going to cause him to blow up, right, or like reach that
Yeah.
point, versus one or two like very sensational, type of performances or anything like that.
Well, and you have to factor in quality of life. I did an interview with him on Hotspawn, like, I don't know, 6 months ago or something. And he kind of talked about, like, the last 4 years of my life have not really been that amazing. It's been filled with this hopeful, I might be able to make it, but I haven't really made it. So I don't know if I can make it. And one of the things he talked about specifically was how hard it was to explain to his family this dynamic of being really, 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 really good at something, like so good it seems silly to give it up, but also not quite good enough to really make it a sustainable living. Because he's what? In the top 0.001% of players or whatever, but he's not in that next zero over that is team secret or whatever. And that's the difference between being a millionaire and making 25 grand a year and working 60-hour weeks or whatever. You spend a lot of time on the fucking computer with that life.
Yeah, you just summed it up real nice. I mean, when we played with him as standard, he was ranked 1 EU. Like it's yeah, you summed it up perfect. I don't have anything to add
Yeah.
to that.
A
It's
lot of hours.
yeah.
Yeah. So what do you think it'll take to get orgs back in NA? I mean, we've still got EG. They've basically got an EU lineup at the moment. Whatever. Outside of EG, when do you think we'll get some money back in North American Dota on the team side of things? Is it leagues? Is that the answer?
Probably all indications are probably not until the DPC structure is known or starts. Probably not until then. I think there is a decent amount of optimism that like that will be better for orgs and stuff. At the same time, though, one of the things on any side of things, this is a factor for players and for orgs and stuff as well, is the sense of growth. Like even if you tell someone that they can sustain, or the economic, even if you tell an org that the economics are better under new GPC than they previously were, if there isn't a sense of like growth or like, I don't want to say like excitement, like optimism, things will get better in the future, that's still pretty hard for some orgs to take the plunge. Some of them don't care as much because this is just one part of their portfolio, maybe, or whatever, or like the owner or the investment, like is like a Dota person, and so they disproportionately like want to have it. Like all of those factors can be mixed in, but the overall sense of like growth and trajectory is obviously for any industry like pretty important. Like you want there to be optimism. So that part's a little bit harder to kind of show that being the case. One thing that has been left out, a lot of stuff that's been said or has been an open secret for some, not even really a secret, is that we have like, I'm pretty sure we have by far the smallest player base of any region. Like we have
like not pro, like, just in general. Like if you look at the NA servers, absolutely, 100%.
Yeah. Which like even if the eyeballs here are worth a little bit more, even if you overperform that potentially like competitively and stuff, it's still just tough to like get people to buy into that. And you see that with you see that impact on like the talent pool. Like where is the next generation of these, I guess, Quins and Gunners, and I guess DNM is it, but like where's the next generation of these kind of players coming up through the pipeline or making a name for themselves? I guess Bryle, you can put like those types of players you can put into that generation.
There's a few that you named two. I'm hard pressed to think of too many others. It's like Arteezy's not young anymore. He's just a regular age player. I remember when he was a young gun, right? That was what, MLG 2013, 2014. That was a long time ago now. We're ready for that next generation of what Arteezy was back. I mean, you remember that hype around MLG 2013? This fucking kid comes in, stands in for this team, plays like an absolute fucking god at one of the biggest Dota events for the time, the first event that had third-party crowdfunding through a compendium, the BTS crew casting it, Velat there solo casting the whole fucking thing. That event had so much hype around it, and I mean, we've had some storylines since then. We've had Sumail and a couple others, and some I'm not doing justice, I'm sure, but I think North America specifically is overdue for a storyline like that.
I'm just looking at the tournament, and so what was do you remember what the total prize pool, the total base prize pool was for that tournament?
I think, this is my guess, MLG vouched 80K, and then they raised like 200 or 180, so the prize pool was just south of 300K total. Am I close?
So I just looked it up. Obviously, I'm cheating here. I'm taking the host role here.
That's
So
cool.
the total prize pool was 136K.
Oh,
MLG's was 50, and they raised 86 or whatever the rest of that was
okay.
for in game. So
It's off.
like the reason I brought that up is because we just had a tournament just now, the summit that was, I think it was like 100K, right? And
I think it was 200. I think it started
200.
I
Oh,
think
sorry, just for our region.
yeah, that might have been the total
But,
number.
but okay, that's a good point. So the overall prize pool of like the summit or whatever is like it's like way bigger, right?
Yeah, so North America was 100,000, Europe CIS was 50,000, Southeast Asia was 100,000. So 250K total across all three. And I think they purposefully said, "Hey, Southeast Asia and the Americas are underloved, so we're going to put a heavy prize pool there because Europe's already getting so much money elsewhere." I think that was the thought process.
Yeah. So the only point I want to make there is like what you're describing, the atmosphere, the kind of anticipation, the excitement, the build up, the possibilities, the kind of creating of like narratives, the rising star stuff. That was from a tournament that had a 50K base prize pool.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and then like you compare that with one today. If you run a tournament today, years later with a 50K prize pool, even twice the base prize pool, like you know, in our region or whatever, like can you even is anything going to be built up over that? Like even the players aren't going to be that excited about that. You know, it's like one team is going to be like, oh, I get to stay above water this month if I win this tournament.
Yeah, right.
And if I don't, I get to, you know, depending on where I am, maybe I'm okay if I'm in South America, like lower cost of living and all that. But if I'm in NA, that's a side gig.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, so one thing Trent's reminded me of a couple times when I start saying things like you're saying right now is that we got robbed of ESL Los Angeles. And don't forget that that was going to be a super hype event in North America in one of the biggest Dota audiences in the country, Los Angeles, also just a shitload of people, full international teams. That event was going to be huge and really awesome. And it's just an absolute shame that it was timed. I mean, actually, when lockdown started. There were people that flew there, worked for a day, and then they said, "Nope, we're shutting it down. Go home." That's as unlucky as it gets. So
that was an absolute backbreaker. I think I probably can't speak. I don't want to speak for people or talk too much about, but like for Chaos, that was absolutely devastating.
yeah.
For us, that was devastating. We were doing very well, like leading into that tournament and like practice with European teams with like these OGs. So we were, we were as optimistic as can be. Obviously, they're just scrims, but we were very optimistic about it. Yeah, and it's right in our backyard. Well, in NA, I guess. Chaos was very high on it. It was a backbreaker for sure. It could not have come at a worse time.
Yeah, heartbreaker for fans as well. Everybody hungry for events in NA now that TI has moved to a proper international waters. But sometimes you got to just roll with the punches. But if we actually get this league system that Valve is looking to set up, we're going to have what I can only imagine is an influx of player-run orgs, especially in NA, because who are these 9 through 16 teams that are going to be playing in Division 2? Where do they come from? Those are like pub stacks right now in the current state of NA. So that is interesting in a way, though, because that will be money just going straight to the hands of top players in the region. Even if the matches are of subpar quality, it's still money into players, and that's a serious incentive to try hard, I suppose.
Yeah, it does build this potential for consistency of competition. I think you're going to see, you're going to see these players who've like achieved some results in the region over the years. They'll probably come back and at least make a stack, even if they're in school or they're pursuing something else. Like they'll still play.
Mm-hmm.
They'll still make teams. The overall level of consistent competition, I would say, would probably increase. I would think that there's going to be more scrimming, more people playing, more people kind of distinguishing themselves through that competition as well. Just anytime you have organized competition that that encourages people to participate. Obviously, it's a good thing because it rebuilds the kind of pyramid of straining to get to the top. It rebuilds the base of that pyramid of people like competing and playing. So
Right.
it's a plus. It's nice that they get prize money as well, because I think it was kind of astute to recognize that when you play for DPC points, or the teams that are at the top and are playing for like DPC points and majors and stuff, what they're really playing for is not the monetary reward of the qualifier or the regional tournament. They're playing for the bigger, the right to go to TI or the majors. That's really what's incentivizing them. So if if you give them less prize money for that, I think that's fine, because that's they're playing for something bigger than that anyway, realistically, right? So it's fine for everybody else for to get something so they can put some time into it, and that ends up lifting up the scene overall. So I mean that's good. Obviously we hope that gets started as soon as possible, but I also understand if they run one now, they're going to run into the same issues they have with the DPC right now, which is how long do these results last for, even if we run a circuit?
Yeah, it needs to have an end in sight for the whole system to really make sense. And there's a point where I think they've said in blogs, like you can't just replace TI with something online. There's something about getting everybody in one place that makes the event worth doing. So, and I agree with that. I think it has to be of a minimum quality to be worth doing. Jack, I want to ask you a hard one here. All right, and you can give a non-answer if you want to, but it just popped up and became relevant again, and it is someone that I'm pretty sure you've had some dealings. Thoughts on Demon and his recent dialogue, I guess, about returning. He just tweeted recently, it's been 5 months, implied that all of the allegations were anonymous and that he wished people could come forward so he could make it right and I guess get on with his career. Any thoughts and any opinion on whether or not Demon should or could make a resurgence in the professional Dota space?
I'm not. I personally I don't really know him, but like we've said hi to each other a few times and stuff, but we're not like friends or anything.
You're
We're
not
not
hanging out on the weekends.
Yeah, we've never worked together in any team setting. So I don't really know the guy well. I do remember reading what he posted like a few months ago, and uh, I mean, I don't know, that was kind of all over the place. I If his point, based on, I mean, I remember seeing the tweet. If his point is that people should like come forward or whatever, the ones who like spoke out anonymously. I mean, I think just my first reaction to that would be, um, if that's the case, then he should. The first thing that he should do is talk to them.
You should know. It shouldn't be so many situations that you're not sure who it is that made the allegations. I think that's a little alarming.
I think when these things come up, if they're completely fabricated, then he should, then he can say that they are, and if they aren't, then he should try to square that away with like the people directly, and it shouldn't be like it shouldn't be like a show yourself in public type of thing. I mean, this whole concept of anonymity and stuff, it exists for a reason. Obviously there's been cases where that has been abused or whatever. That's possible. I don't have all the answers here, but it's not something that should be like, please expose yourself in the public space.
I think it comes off as a little insensitive to the victim side of things, of like, dude, it's not easy and people are afraid to get attacked, and it's just being under the microscope like that is not fun. So you got to respect that it's hard for people that feel victimized with shit. And whether you disagree with it or not, you still have to respect that it's a sensitive thing, right? And I think that's how a lot of people feel. Somebody summarized it really well on Reddit that was like, honestly, he might have been able to recover from this, but the follow-up statement, the press release, if you will, it takes more than a look of the eye to get my penis erect or whatever. A couple of the other real treasures in that thing. It's just like, man, you really missed the mark on this. And I don't know, man. I don't know what to tell you. Sorry. that's the best you got, then sorry, man. You know, and I want to sound insensitive. You know, I have like Jimmy's one of those guys. He's always been nice to me. I've certainly heard things about him. I worked with him a bit at BTS. You know, he was around the studio. He was on the first episode of that In the Studio podcast that we did. He lived in LA, so he would come to the studio somewhat regularly. I never witnessed him do anything egregious, but he was definitely known as the guy that was always getting numbers, you know, if you will. He was always looking to meet women and stuff like that. So it's hard to judge. All I can judge is the stuff that he's said and written, and I don't love it. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I think we can agree that this probably wasn't the best way to bring it to the public consciousness again, I guess.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean, would you guys ever hire him as a coach going forward?
I seriously don't really see that happening.
Well, you guys do have a coach right now, right? I feel bad not
don't.
knowing who it is. Oh, you don't? Okay, so you're in the market. Okay, all right. DMs
I mean,
are open.
Well, I mean, that's you know, that's one of the things we're not like, we don't think we really want to coach at this time, let alone somebody who we think is like a good fit for that position. And so, I mean, that's a big part of it. And, you know, like, obviously if somebody is in any way involved in a situation like this, you know, that's not a plus. You know, we would have to, like, that would have to be probably conclusively squared away one way or the other before we'd even consider that. And that's even if we were looking for a coach at this time, and even if we did feel that he, you know, met the kind of things that we were looking for. That obviously, you know, would have a pretty big impact.
Well, we'll see. I certainly I don't wish ill on the guy. I try not to wish ill on anyone these days, but curious to see how it all shakes out. I don't know. Just always curious kind of from the player perspective with coaches, because I know it's delicate. It's a really weird relationship, right? You need somebody that the players respect enough to actually listen to when they give you stuff, and you need a coach who's got like that right balance of ego to know when to interject and when to really be firm, so to speak, for lack of a better word, but also you can't be too overbearing or else the players tune you out after a while. Like, I can't imagine being a coach is an easy job in a game like Dota.
It's not. It's definitely tricky because the factors you mentioned, there has to be obviously like a base amount of respect for the person's kind of ideas and understanding, but not just that, but like it can't just be respect for their achievements as a player or whatever. They also need to be good at either teaching, communicating, improving specific players, improving things as a team. And like not all of these things can always be improved at all times. You know, it's not like every coach player relationship in other games or sports or anything is like rosy. There's obviously a lot of conflicts there all the time. And then for to find somebody who's qualified to do that, but who also has no ambitions or desire to either continue playing or, you know, has no alternate angle or potential motive, you know, like those are things that are potentially dangerous even to a team. Like it can tear your team apart. And then like beyond that, obviously, like you said, the personal relationships with the players, you need to establish what is sometimes an adversarial relationship in the sense that you need to be able to challenge people, but you don't actually have that much leverage to do so as a coach because, you know, you don't make decisions over playing time. There are no substitutes. The roster is together like by choice. It's not put together by, you know, a general manager or an owner or something where people don't have much personal connection to each other. And you like there's so many factors that are different. So yeah, it's definitely very challenging to be a coach. It's hard sometimes to even know or fully evaluate the impact of it that somebody can have. It's definitely not easy. And that's why, I mean, you know, we talked about it extensively. We tried a number of people. People felt that they didn't need a coach like at the time or at the moment. And then, even now, and like, you know, we just don't think we're at that point yet.
I see. And again, this is conjecture, but from your lineup, I always got the vibe that SVG as a position 5 brought some kind of natural coach vibes to the team with his leadership style. Is that true? I mean, he's actually a player I don't know that well. SVG's always struck me as he's not shy, but he's relatively quiet. You know, like he'll talk to you if you talk to him, but he's not a guy that's going to speak just for the sake of it. And he's not someone that I really know that well, but I get a very kind of stoic vibe, and that the players on the team really respect him as like a shot caller and an intellectual mind behind the game.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, he's very intelligent.
He's the
He has
captain for a
experience.
reason, I'm sure.
Yeah, he has experience as a coach. He's a good communicator. He's good at kind of distilling ideas and making them like I guess boiling them down or making them deliverable in a good way instead of just a lot of discussions you have. So like in some teams, the discussions you have are not good because they go way too long. They're way all over the place. They're not distilled. They tend to like drive people away or become just like too much at some point. That's like that can be just as bad as like not talking about stuff or being afraid to talk about stuff.
Mhm.
You need to find some in between where things are the takeaways and whatever are like boiled down. The discussions are good, they're productive, they're engaged. Like that's what you need, and that requires good communication on the part of at least some of the people involved, or the people doing it most. Um, so he's very good with that. He's funny as well, so he can inject some humor into difficult situations. Yeah, and obviously he has experience as a coach too, so he knows what that perspective is like.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Well, I've been happy to see you guys jive, and it's been fun to witness your win streak. I certainly hope you guys get it back. One of the last things I wanted to ask you about, a lighter topic for sure. Thoughts about Arkosh Gaming? Did you see the reveal of the latest team to face North America? And are you afraid of what Arkosh Gaming is going to do to Quincy Crew when you guys meet in the qualifiers?
um, we turned down a chance to scrim them because we didn't want to be embarrassed and have our morale take such a huge hit before we went into Summit.
Wow.
In hindsight, we probably should have scrimmed them because they might have prepared us for better to get into the grand finals. I saw the video. That was just like a minute into the video, and you're just like, of course, this is the Slacks production. This is just, of course he would get these cameo. He would take it way too far in some way, and he would get a great. I mean, the casters, the Lacoste part. That Lacoste came in and said what he said. I don't remember what exactly it was. I was like, of course he would get Lacoste to say that. It was great. It was great. It's a really cool premise. I'm glad that Slacks is doing it. I look forward to facing them. I'm excited.
Yeah.
I know who one of the players is. At least one of the players is. I do not know who the others are, which is also intriguing and exciting. That's
right. Well, that's part of it. That's why I wanted to ask. Like, do you get it? Like, do you feel like it's an idea that's worth pursuing, or are you more just looking to watch this train wreck unfold and glad that you're not an investor? Like, what's your stance on it? Do you think it's going to work? Do you think people will rally behind this this Wiccan brand? It's not demonic. It's not it's purely not biblical.
It's yeah, for sure. I mean, he just did such a great job of building I mean, the part where you just said, "Do you get it?" That almost that tells me it's like, hey, look, if you do brand and market your team like you do go over the top on something or really try hard at it, it can be something cool. So the anonymity part is like probably a big part of what's driving that now, because and they're instead of these like very real human players with histories and results and flaws, you just have this kind of intangible, like, who are these people? Like,
Yeah.
it's great. It's great. I look forward to it. I hope they
it's like the Undertaker,
Yeah, yeah. I hope they do well. I hope they have some surprising results so that people can
see these guys on land.
like I hope they surprise people. That would be great. It would just be a lot of fun, and I hope the veneer of the kind of anonymity can be preserved as long as possible. I think that would be. I mean, I don't know how that's going to work, but I hope that can be preserved as long as possible. That'd be great.
Same. I don't know how it'll work either. Maybe a misinformation campaign will be the strategy. I'm genuinely not sure, but I'm sure there are some creative solutions to that
The myth is
problem.
always more interesting than the man. It's a good play. I like it. It's Slacks is this is just
Exactly.
Slack's genius. That's just who he is.
I have full faith in his creative endeavors. And my very last question, buddy, do you miss doing talent work? Have you been doing talent work that I'm just not privy to? Are you happy as a manager right now? Or are we ever going to see Jack put on the jacket again and join us for Captain's Draft 5?
It's a good question. There are times when I miss it. I certainly miss like being around you guys and hanging out and stuff. I still remember some of the conversations we had outside the hotel at TI6. Specifically, like yeah, I definitely do miss a
We've
lot
had
of
some fun
aspects of it.
times. Yep.
Yeah. I think the times that there were some things. I mean, one of them was I forget who I had this conversation with, but someone told me like, it can feel like the circus sometimes. Like you're doing the same thing, but you're going to a different city or a different hotel and different arena instead. Every 2 weeks. And then sometimes if you do too much, like you can get really like you don't have a chance to like refresh or like or really learn or like take a step back or whatever. You're kind of just going like it just keeps going and going and going. And then you don't feel necessarily that there can be necessarily that much upside or growth. So it can be kind of hard to like, to like stay in that. That's the thing about being a manager on the team side that's just always called to me, I guess, is like this idea that you're part of something greater, you're part of like a greater goal. You're part of your goal is literally to win TI. It's like literally the biggest prize that this game that we love has to offer. And for me, like obviously I'm not like a coach. I'm not telling people how to play or anything, but I can help my players become better people, become more effective people and players. I can, there is a relationship of trust and respect among us that allows me to like try to help people become better and to try to help them overcome, certain issues. Whatever that is fulfilling to me. The fact that we're going for, again, the biggest prize in esports that this game has to offer, and that's always the goal is very fulfilling to me, even when the times are, kind of tough or in the dark. So that part has been that part. I don't think I'd ever be able to replace like being a talent or anything else. I think that's why I'm here, and that's I've enjoyed that. So I wouldn't really give that up. But I mean, I definitely miss. It's fun. It's fun being a talent. It's definitely fun, and there's a lot of things I'll never forget about that time and experience.
If you don't mind me asking, how's the financial side of being a manager? Is it financially viable to be a full-time manager in North America?
I think it really depends. Primarily, it depends on the team, the level of the players and team that you have, which subsequently is like the level of teams or organizations that you can work with. Like if you are a manager for like a team that isn't like I would say sponsorship tier or whatever, then probably not. You're probably doing it because you have some some personal relationship with the players. You're trying to work your way up. You're friends with somebody, or you're like trying to help them out. Then it's not really. But if you're doing it with a good organization, or you're doing it with like a good team, and in this case, like I'm team side now versus org side that I was before on VGJ, then it is possible, at least in the short term. It's quite doable. But that depends on, again, if the team is successful and if you're
results
able to work with good orgs as a result of that. They'll that's
yeah. And then they can take care of you. I see. So there's kind of like an ebb and flow to it, but overall it's not so bad. We're just in a little bit of a dry spell right now, and I think we're all feeling it. This was certainly the slowest year for me in the last like 6 years or something, talent-wise, in Dota, just because there's been so many less events. And I had a couple gigs lined up right before lockdown started. I was actually scheduled to go to the Philippines, and they canceled. They sent me an itinerary, but then didn't book the flights, and then canceled the whole event like 3 days later. So it's been a tough year for everybody.
How's up you? So like I like that you you took a different direct, like you wrote about your experiences, right? And like you've always struck me, you're gonna explore like other stuff, and you're gonna so like how has that been? Has that been Like
So it's been okay. It's weird for Moonduck because our niche was doing online stuff, right? So that was a whole like vertical that we could go to teams and say, hey, this is really convenient. You don't have to travel. It's just a couple days online. That was like our big sales pitch to get good teams for our goofy game modes. And now that everyone else is online and like PGL and ESL and DreamHack and all these events, they have this massive budget that used to be offline, now online. We can't compete with that at all. And you can find that with sponsorship sales being harder than ever before, at least from the seat that I'm sitting in. None of our usual suspects are really interested in making big spends. Even the betting sponsors are tightening up a little bit compared to what they've been like the last couple of years. We're sitting on our hands a little bit. So I think everybody at Moonduck's just been spending more time streaming. Our stream team's been pretty active. Sunspan's been slaying it in Valorant. Purge has been doing as usual. As you've seen, I'm sure. Slacks is grinding up to Immortal. I've been doing more podcast stuff. So it's not bad. We've all got this kind of, well, I can always just work on my own stuff kind of mentality. But it ain't the same when there aren't the big events to fill in the gaps. And also, to be blunt, the pay isn't the same. You get paid more to travel and work on site and do the full budget stuff. The rates to work at home with pajamas on the bottom and a button up top, just it's not 1-to-1 by any stretch. It's kind of like 50% in my experience, and there's less of it too because everybody's so hungry. So I'm not sure exactly what's next for us, and part of that's because we don't know the timeline on COVID either. So it gets really hard to plan. I guess in some ways we're lucky that we can just pivot to our Twitch contract, and we've got viewer minute bonuses and stuff like that. But doesn't feel good to be living on your backup plan. It's kind of like driving around on a spare tire. It ain't bad, but you don't want to go cross country on that thing.
I can't believe that. Is this? Am I? Oh, I thought I was losing it for a second, but it was what 18, 20 months ago that we were all in DC for the captain's draft.
Correct.
Was that just?
Was
that only 19 months ago?
It was January of 2018. So yeah, this New Year's will be the 2-year anniversary. You're correct.
Oh, okay. No, it's okay. Okay, it's a little bit.
So it's more like 22 months or something.
Okay, I was a little off because for some reason I thought it was the start of last year. No, it wasn't. It was the start of 2018.
It had to be 2018.
Yeah. Oh, I was like, okay, I am losing it then. But
it's hard. They blur together.
I can't believe that. That was awesome. It was different. It was, how many people? A lot of people turned out for that, right?
Yeah.
Like it was a great event, great energy. Like it was a different format. Like that was just.
Well, you know what really fucked us, Jack? It was the dates. And what really stung about that is it was either the BTS major or one of the GESC events, but a couple of them were announced that they were going to be canceled later on in the circuit. And we asked Valve if we could have those dates instead of January 4th through 7th or whatever, the first week of the year immediately after New Year's. And they said, no, that will not be possible. And those dates, I think, are what broke that event. We had about 1,000 people turn out for that. Maybe it was like 1,200, somewhere in there. If we had doubled that, that event would have been profitable. So we were sort of banking on that fluctuation of the attendance. And there were a number of people that reached out to us in the post of that event saying, I would have loved to go. I planned on going, but traveling around New Year's is expensive and inconvenient and just like not a good time. If we had done that in the summer, it could have been completely different. But when you're presented, you pitch this thing to Valve and they say, it's these dates or it's nothing. You go, well, okay, I guess we're going to go for it. So it was the attendance and then also the lack of sponsorship sales because that first week of the year is known as returns week. That's where everybody returns the shit that doesn't fit or they didn't like that they got from Christmas. Nobody buys stuff. They exchange it and use store credit. So that's like the time of year when all of the advertisers are like regrouping and trying to figure out how they're going to spend for their next few quarters. So anyway, yeah,
that was a scuffed event of what it could have been. It was a scuffed version of what it could have been.
Absolutely. And the flights were more expensive, dude. Do you know how expensive it is to fly from South America to North America on New Year's? Because the travel times are so long. You have to leave. They had to leave on New Year's. They were like $2,500 a pop, dog.
Yikes.
We ate shit on those flights. I remember our project manager being like, "What do I do? I'm already over budget and I still have 25% of the flights to book." Like, book them. There's no life hack here. It's like we need the fucking players. We just got to deal with it. This is part of the risk that we assume by doing this. But that specific date range really compounded the financial strain for us a lot. We were never going to make a lot of money on it, but we could have at least broken even if we were given some of the prime dates. And that's one of the reasons why I'm still so salty about GESC, because they took all those prime fucking dates and delivered all that garbage. They canceled 2 of them. They never paid out the other 2. Motherfuckers.
GSC. I have a picture ready to go as a tweet at some point. So our trophy from GSC Thailand is actually in SVG's basement with his dad. His dad asked for the trophy. His dad got it. So I got a picture of the trophy, and I'm ready with the still the only thing we've won from GSC Thailand tweet to go at some point.
At least you got something, dude. I mean, that's more than everybody else got. That's
That is true. That is true. The thing that needed to be shipped overseas and appears to have been made of somewhat sturdy material is what we got from it.
yeah.
I just had to bring up Captain's Draft because there's just so many there's so many just memorable things. Like I remember like you and everybody being on stage. I remember like the people who did show up. Like as far as I remember, the second and third day had like way more people than the first day. Right?
It was really cold on the first day too. So
yeah, there's a buzz, there's an energy there. The interviews with the players and the teams. I remember also that was when like the Manila event was announced to like, or was discussed about it was going to lose its like major sort of certification.
Yeah. Galaxy battles or whatever, right?
Yeah, I remember talking to Seb at the time, and then it's basically there's some discussion with Seb where I was like, "Yo, Seb, like." You can come and just make your own VGJ team maybe in a few months. Like, who knows if that how that timeline would have turned out. Would have been crazy. There's it, but still, just being there, North American event, live audience, good energy, like cool content. There's ability trap. Like there's just so much cool stuff. We had Blake Martinez. It was great. It pains me to keep talking about this, but it's such a memorable event.
I mean, I appreciate it. And I just made that Moonduck Top 50 Clips video, and there were a shitload from Captain's Draft in there. So I've recently been going down memory lane also. And man, that ability draft, for you and me in particular, that match was so memorable because I was the position 1 Dazzle on one team, and just the fact that I got Dazzle in ability draft was like, what the fuck? How did this happen? The one time I played a game on the main stage, and I think you were OD on the other team. I had Thirst. I forget what abilities you had. You might have had Arcane Orb, but you were slaughtered. I think you were cleaving with Arcane Orb, right?
I had some like super.
You were busted.
Yeah, whatever. But I mean, just the fact that you had like Slacks and Purge like trash talking each other, drafting against each other, and coaching the teams. I mean, it's just all this stuff is just. I love that. I miss it so much.
Yeah. Well, we're glad that you could be there with us, man. You were the perfect addition, and we always felt bad because you got roped into the well-known Phil panel, the 90 minutes of sitting there telling stories while Slacks got belittled by the crowd, and how amazing and like kind of painful that was. And we always joke about how funny it was that you were one of our few like non-Moonduck talent that we brought in for that event, and somehow you got roped into the most Moonducky part of the event.
Yeah. Good time.
It worked out well though, and now Blake Martinez is on the Giants. I mean, whoever thought that would happen? What a timeline!
I don't know. I'm like, maybe he's the savior that Dota needs. Come on, Blake, you've got it. We're right here.
He's dad status now, dude. He doesn't have time. He's juggling a wife, the kid, pro football. Blake ain't got no time for Dota anymore.
I see. He's outgrown. But we haven't, and we're still here. So.
Exactly. Do you think you'll ever outgrow it? Maybe that's a good thing to wrap up on, because I mean, I just turned 31. I forget how old you are. Are we in the same age group?
Pretty close. I'm 2 years older than you.
Okay, so even better. Is there a point where you think you'll ever quote unquote outgrow this? Like there was a period where I always thought, okay, if this esports shit doesn't work out, I am gonna have to go back to some kind of like 9 to 5, not literally suit and tie, but suit and tie kind of shit. And the more removed from that I get, the more I think I'll find a way to make something work. I couldn't imagine going back to that grind. Any thoughts about that? Like, are you ever going to outgrow this shit? Will you ever be done with esports? Is there some kind of a breaking point for you, or a point where, like, even when I interviewed Richard Lewis, he said that he's recently been trying to change his lifestyle so he can have some balance and maybe have something like a family, that kind of reality of, I don't want to be alone forever. I don't want to be a workaholic literally for the rest of my life. At what point does that become the priority?
Um, I think I I probably made this decision a while ago. Although I mean, obviously, could still ship, but I'm going down with the Dota ship. There aren't really other games that I really like or care. I mean, they're like I've gone back to playing like some like super old games. Like I've been playing Age 2 DE. Age 2 was the first online game I ever played. This is when I was like 13, 14 years old. It's actually recovered. It's actually like grown quite a bit in recent months. With like there's like actually a competitive scene going.
Really?
Secret had a team for like a couple months. It's actually been kind of growing, but like the people that are
Wow.
coming back now, they're like these like like 30, 35. They're like my age and just coming back and reliving this game. But there hasn't been a game since Dota that I've really just liked anywhere to the same degree. I don't whatever you want to call it, addiction, whatever. It's just a wonderful game. I still think it's the best game out there. And I don't think I'm really interested in kind of just existing or mingling in like some esports space like afterwards. I probably would be opposed to that just because like if the passion isn't there, if the love and interest and whatever isn't there, it's kind of hard for me to justify staying in that. So yeah, I'm probably going down with the Dota ship, one way or the
Gotcha.
other.
You and
Um,
OD Pixel. I've heard him say that as well. I'm not an esports guy. I'm a Dota guy. Like, yeah, I'm mostly a Dota guy, but I think I like money guy. Yeah, like, I mean,
yeah,
I've been asking other people this, Jack. Do you think I'm crazy for like, one of my backup plans is moving to Southeast Asia. All right, if depending on how this COVID shit goes, if the next like 6 months look really bad and some of my other projects don't turn into anything useful, I got a couple irons in the fire that aren't ready to be announced yet. Casting mobile games in Southeast Asia could be a play to maximize the old bank account. And I don't know how fulfilling that would be long term, but I've talked to Gods about it and he's filled me with a little bit of confidence. And I can't tell if that's a big brain play just to get rid of one more Dota talent or if he actually thinks I could make it casting mobile games in Southeast Asia. But am I fucking crazy, man? Like, am I too old for that shit? Should I just go back to corporate?
I don't think so because again, you have a well developed, finely honed skill set that is in demand there in like a pretty growing like market. So I don't think it. And whenever somebody says that, I ask them to think about the people we've worked with in our space who are like much older or much more established, and they just came into Dota. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah. Yeah.
there's like numerous examples of that. So not at all. I mean, but I will say like you got to do what you got to do because I said I'm willing to go down with the Dota ship, but that doesn't mean I'm willing to starve in the hold of the ship before it's gone down. So yeah, like you got to do what you got to do. That's good that you're diversifying because some talent are doing that. Obviously, all of
Yeah.
us in Dota have had to think about that. You've seen some people retire. One of those people who retired, I'm still pretty close with. I still talk to, and he's like in school, and he's considered kind of different possibilities. I'm sure everybody who isn't at the absolute apex tier of Dota has also had to think about, hey, what if this actually doesn't happen for a while? What's going to happen? Where am I pivoting to next? It's something
Yeah.
that people, have to think about in this situation. So that's good on you for having irons in the fire and having options and
Just
thinking
need
about
one
that.
of those irons to turn into gold. Then we'll be really cooking with gas. But now we'll see. It's definitely like a backup plan. And it's a long shot. But one of the things that someone pointed out to me not that long ago is that there's this unique thing happening in Singapore right now where English is the primary language that they're really pushing moving forward. So this young generation speaks very fluent sort of English or American English, so to speak, and the older generation doesn't. But that means right now, my skill set, as you mentioned, is really in demand in Singapore, or in that area where there's this audience of folks that are getting better at English and they want English speaking content, but there aren't enough talent to fill the demand for that content yet in terms of having broadcast quality English. I worked for Garena like in 2012, and that was one of the things they were really struggling with. They hired me as a remote commentator, but they didn't have any co-commentators for me that worked at their company that spoke English well enough to do like play-by-play in English. And they tried with a few, and all of them were just not comfortable with it and ended up, giving it up to do something else after a couple of casts. So it's just, I can't help but think about that and go, huh, that's an interesting gap there. It's kind of rare to see those sort of opportunities, I guess.
You know what that reminds me of? There's always like a space for like in American television, whatever, like entertainment. There's always a space for like a British, a British. You know what I mean, right?
Like
there's
Piers
always,
Morgan, that kind of shit.
There's always a space for that, and that's kind of what that reminds me of. You know, like now, like there's gonna be, if it's a primarily English speaking broadcast, obviously very broad and diverse audiences in C. You know, I feel like that's always gonna have a spot there. It's gonna, there's gonna be a desire for it.
And obviously, Dota is way bigger there than it is in North America. I can tell you that. And Europe's not a bad place to be either, but I feel like OD Pixel's got that shit on lockdown. So I got to go for the fresher waters, you know?
That's true. Also, going to Europe would just be seen as a categorical betrayal of all the you know?
That's true. That's very true. That's a good point. Always looking out for the optics. I like that. Well, Jack, it's always a pleasure. Is there anything else you wanted to get off your chest here while I have you here? I'm not in any rush, but I don't want to take up too much of your time. I know you're a busy guy.
No, that was already very therapeutic. I look forward to, I'd be happy to do this, whenever else. It's nice. It's nice to just have someone to cry together with as we reminisce on what was and hope for a better future. It's nice.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I love catching up with you. Hopefully we can do it in person before too long, but my door is always open. I've been trying to diversify this podcast and bring on non-Dota folks, and now we've done 2 Dota episodes in a row, so I got to be careful, but absolutely, man. Keep fighting the good fight. I hope North America turns around, and I hope Quincy Crew continues their reign of dominance, man. I'm always cheering on the sidelines. I like watching you guys win. I pinged Quinn the other day on Twitter asking if he would add me on Steam so that I could find his pub games more easily. And I said, hey, man, you think you could add me so I could watch your pubs? He said, I don't think you need my permission to watch my pub games. Like, I don't need your permission, but I do need to be able to find them. So it was just a very classic Quinn response of like, yeah, sure, whatever. But you can just do this, right? But
that's true. You could watch live. Well, actually, no. Maybe it's harder to watch live because if you're friends with, it's like the same group of people in those games, so it's hard to. Yeah. But the Friday night like PPD pubs and stuff, when I'm around, I've been trying to check in and see what they're all up to, and it's nice that there's still a good pub culture going during the prime times. That is always refreshing, and I often see your boys at the face of it, so that's good, man. We'll do our best until Arkosh arrives.
Very good. Appreciate it. All right, gang. Well, you know where to find the podcast. Same place as Trent and Zyori. This YouTube video will be up on the Zyori YouTube. If you're new to the stream here, join us on Discord. It's a lot of fun. We talk about all sorts of stuff. And make sure you give Jack a follow. I think he's still at KBBQ Dota. And he's chock full of insights inside of Dota and out. We'll catch you all next time. Thanks a lot.